On episode 305 of the podcast, we talk about how brain science can help your business. We go over the 4 stages of awareness and how to guide your clients well so that selling becomes a service instead of feeling awkward and salesy. What's up, friend? I am Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business Podcast. This is the show for corporate and commercial filmmakers who are wanting to get serious about their video business, to really work on the business, not just in the business, to have a business that is sustainable and that one that can scale, one where you can charge what you're worth and enjoy the work that you're doing without, stressing out and being frustrated and feeling like you're all by yourself. This show is all about the business of production. And if that sounds like you, then you are in the right space, place, spot. I'm glad that you're here. I've been doing this work for 18 years this month. So congratulations to me. I am proud. I'm so happy and grateful to be at the 18-year mark. It's crazy. I've been able to build a team. We have a studio, and we've hit $1 million more than once in annual revenue, and that's a cool thing. And so on the show, I share some of the things that have worked, a lot of things that haven't, and I'm able to introduce you to a lot of the amazingly, incredibly talented, smart, and awesome people that I know. And sometimes, I do solo episodes, but not today. Today, you're in for a real treat. Somebody who talks about science, and that person is not me. This was actually a very eye-opening interview, and my introduction to Eugene in person was just last week, and we had a great time, and you'll hear all about that in this episode. But I'm really, really glad you're here. I think this is a special episode. 2 weeks ago, we had the Onward Summit, and that was amazing. I can't even remember if I've recorded an episode since then, but it was just unbelievable. It was amazing, and I'm so grateful, so grateful for all the people that came and spent a few days hanging out at our studio and learning together. It was really, really great. And then last week I was in Nashville. I'm in 2 different masterminds, and I lead a mastermind. But last week was my friend Mike Kim, the mastermind that he leads. We all met in Nashville, and he has 5 different groups that he leads. And so there was about 60 people. I got to sit on a panel and talk about video marketing, which was really fun. And I got to meet all sorts of incredible people and have really, really smart conversations. And one of those was with Eugene. He is in my mastermind, so I do get to see him a couple of times a month on Zoom, but this was in person, so that was extra special. My big takeaway over the last couple of weeks, we did the hot seat during the Onward Summit. We did that last year, and it was really a powerful way for people to get help on their business. And that's what in the mastermind that I lead, we have hot seats every week. And in the 2 that I'm a part of, somebody is in the hot seat every single session. And it's just an awesome way to get outsiders to hear where your business is at, where you might be struggling, what you need questions, or what you might have questions about, and to be able to get insight from people that, look at your business differently than you do. And so anyway, one of the biggest takeaways that I took from last week in Nashville was a new format that we're going to do launching in January with the new mastermind for Studio Sherpas. And we're coming up on a year for everybody who's been in the mastermind, and we're gonna hit pause. So we're not gonna mastermind in December, but we are going to open the doors back up and start back up in January with this new format, which is twice a month, and we're going to have a retreat at I think about the 4-month mark, but it's essentially a 5-month commitment to meet twice a month with a group of 12 or fewer people on Zoom, and you can learn more about the mastermind format and kind of hear from some of the people that have been in the mastermind that I led. You can do this if you go to studiosherpas.com/mastermind. Read about it. Stuff about the financial commitment is in there, what it looks like, what things are included. And then if it sounds like something that you might be interested in, you can apply. And basically, doors are open right now to apply, and it works on a first come, first serve basis. So as I'm getting applications in, I'm reading those, checking those out, and making sure that if you sound like you'd be a good fit, then we'll have a quick call, and then you lock your spot in with a financial commitment if all looks and sounds good. And once we hit 12 people, we're closing the doors for those 5 months, so January through May, right? It's 5 months. And then we'll take a little break and then relaunch it again in the summer. So that's the scoop. I'm really excited about this new format, and I'm excited to see who says, you know what, I think this might be just what I need for my business. So think about it and consider it, and check it out at studiosherpas.com/mastermind. And that's it for now. Let's jump into this episode. I say that's it. That's it for the intro. Let's get into the episode. Really, really powerful. Let's roll the tape. Here we go. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to this episode. Today, I've got my brand new best friend, Dr. Eugene Choi, who is a certified transformational mindset coach and board-certified clinical pharmacist that helps talented, heart-driven leaders operate at their highest levels of clarity, energy, and focus. And Eugene and I met. Can I call you Eugene?
Yes, of course.
We met last week in person. We've been in mastermind together with our mutual friend Mike Kim, and just had an awesome time in Nashville. And my favorite night was the first night that we got there, and we hung out. You and I hung out on the rooftop, and you laid your forearm out and were giving me like 4 different point outline. It was mind blowing. It was so good, dude. I'm super happy to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Like, how excited? On a scale of 1 to 10, like what would you say? Like
probably like a I don't know, like a 10.3.
Yeah. That's about where I'm at too. So let me finish reading your bio here, because it's just like, it's so cool. So Eugene utilizes his expertise in clinical pharmacy, neuroscience, and business coaching. His unique science-backed process, along with the use of groundbreaking technology, helps entrepreneurs figure out how to dramatically improve performance, innovate dynamic solutions, and achieve their goals. His articles have reached over 9 million people, and he has helped hundreds of leaders significantly transform their results at both a professional and personal level. And one of his YouTube videos currently has, I think, reached over 23 million views. He's got a filmmaking background. So, yes, Eugene, let's just start there. So you're a doctor, you're doing all this like crazy mind science stuff. And that's kind of what was mind blowing when we were on the rooftop. As we were talking about me trying to convince clients to hire us to tell their stories, to create these brand stories and stuff for them. But seriously, that was such a massive, just eye-opening experience for me. And I shared with my friend Jim, who's in business development, and I was like, yeah, this is how Eugene broke this down for me. And I think, Jim, you've kind of said this to me before, but he said it in a different way that really just kind of made me realize, like, okay, there's something to this. So thank you. Jim's kind of annoyed, that I didn't hear it from him first, but whatever. But let's talk about your filmmaking career, because that was kind of was that your first like professional or first move into the world of professionalism? How do you say that?
You mean like career-wise?
Yeah, that.
Professional career?
Yes.
No, it was not. I was practicing pharmacy right out of college.
Oh, you were? Okay.
I did that for 3 years. Yeah. And then I started dabbling in filmmaking, right? I was creating little fun films, and then friends wanted me to make a little fun thing for their wedding. It was like, I have a sense of humor, so it's just like a lot of like fun comedic kind of pieces. Mm-hmm. People really liked it. So that's kind of when I started dabbling into it more. I did the whole, like, I went down that rabbit hole with the tech and stuff. I learned how to rotoscope and make lightsabers. So I made a little short film with that from After Effects. And then I So in YouTube was pretty new, right, back then. Like I can't believe it's like 15 years now, but it was relatively new. So one of the things that was interesting is, you know, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm Asian, right? So for the Asian community, the Asian
I can tell now.
YouTube was a game changer. A lot of people who got reached influential status that are Asian started with YouTube. Because in the beginning, it was really easy to get on that front page, right? Your content. So one of these groups, I reached out to them and we connected, and they asked to see some of my work. They liked it. That's kind of what started this journey into filmmaking, because there was these 3 Asian guys that decided to go full time on YouTube. And they were leaving behind really prestigious careers. Like I'm talking like one guy was a director at the White House when Obama was president. The second guy was a Wharton grad, you know, top business school, was at Bain Consulting. These are like not like small jobs. These are like really big career moves. And the third guy was a Harvard med student. And they decided to go full time in YouTube. So I was like, what excuse do I have as a pharmacist? Like if these guys are, and they invited me to join them. So I did. Because they were already having traction. They had their first viral video. And then that's kind of what got me into the world of filmmaking. I was tired of pharmacy at the moment. I was just like, I don't know if this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. Looked at my wife. I said, what do you think about going on a cross-country road trip for 2 months, and then we'll move to LA and try this filmmaking thing? So that's kind of how that started.
And what kind of videos were you guys doing?
It was a lot of short films. So it's like short films that feel good short films. And at times one of the missions is to try to create, you know, change as well, social change. So the mission is basically kind of like, in a nutshell, it's like, how do you make empathy sexy? So it's whether it's in the form of a short film, which is, when I was there, we did a lot of that, you know, like love stories or like fun narrative kind of little pieces. Those are the things that got picked up a lot, right? By like television or went viral. Yeah. So short films.
That's cool. And so what year was this roughly?
Oh my gosh. 2013 was when I made the move to LA.
Okay. Wow.
From New York City, where I'm from.
I think one of my favorite parts of our relationship is when we were chatting about filmmaking, and you're like, oh yeah, there's this guy, Patrick Moreau. And I was like, oh yeah. And I send you a picture, like we're hanging out in my kitchen. You're like, oh my gosh. I'm like,
I totally fanboyed in that moment. Yeah. I was like, what? Like, that's the guy whose content I used to like follow, like when I was starting the filmmaking stuff. He was great. Yeah.
Still is great. He's still got something going on there.
Definitely.
Talk about how did this work? You know, transition. You guys got this like massive video that got, you know, tons and tons of views, and maybe just break that down a little bit now, you know, all these years later. Like what do you think made it or has made it so successful?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the narrative stuff, yeah, like I was indirectly learning about marketing, because when you get your like 3rd, 4th, 5th viral content coming out, you're going, okay, there's probably a method to the madness here. There's something we're doing that's helping it continue to spread so widely. Because we've met plenty of people who are one-hit wonders as well, because then it was by accident, right? So we realized that it's an actual process. Like, how do you create something that is shareable? That's the key metric. It's just like, how can you create a piece of content that makes the viewer sit there and go, do I want to share this? And usually the reason why people want to share is it's because it usually makes them look good, right? It's just like, hey, look at this really funny thing that I found. And then if I made you laugh, I feel good about that, right? It's usually self-motivated. Or it's some sort of epiphany that occurred, like a big aha moment, a perspective shift. You've rocked their world a little bit. So it makes me want to share it with other people because my mind's just been blown. So those are the things we always looked at, right? In terms of shareability. Number one, it has to be an emotional response as well. Like you have to have an emotional aha moment. That's what plot twists are all about, right? You have this emotional moment. So just making sure that we incorporated stuff like that and solid storytelling, narrative skills, screenwriting. So that's what I learned a lot in terms of, just practicing it. You do your reps. It's not a secret, lottery type of thing.
What would be an example of like an emotional moment or an aha moment that you guys created, that you were like crafting and like, oh, this is the moment that we need to create for this one to stick?
Yeah, absolutely. We can work. I can share a little bit about the biggest project I worked on. So I helped a little bit with the writing, but predominantly where I was involved with the storytelling of it was I was the editor. So it took a while to edit it. It was a 7-month editing project, 8-minute short film. I think actually it crossed the 24 million view mark actually the other month.
Wow.
So it's a story about husband and wife. Wife's going blind due to a rare illness, and then the plot twist is while she felt all alone in this journey, all along the husband's been behind the scenes helping her, right? Like just to try to support as much as possible. She just wasn't aware of it. And, that's where the tears start coming out when the reveal happens that like husband was very involved out of his love for her. So basically, like if I were to break down the storytelling aspect of it, what I was thinking about as an editor from the shareability, the emotional response point is like every story is about shifting a perspective. Like the viewer has a set of beliefs, a set of perspectives of about what they believe about themselves, what they believe about the world. So for me personally, I was thinking about what might people believe about themselves watching this that it could impact. And I know a lot of people who might believe about themselves that they're alone. They're not supported. You see what I'm saying? Like I'm alone in this world. No one's looking out for me. And my life just sucks. It's going down the drain. So it's very important to identify with the audience there, right? Like that's the stuff I talked to you about behind the scenes about like you want to confirm the symptoms of the person you're talking to from a place of empathy. So that's that's what the setup is, right? Before you give the payoff in a story, is like the setup is just like this is what she's going through, and a lot of people can relate to that. So it's like, oh, even though I'm not going blind, I can feel what it's like to not get the support I'm looking for. So then the perspective shift was this question in my mind is just like, yeah. What if, even though you feel alone, what if, even though you feel like no one's out there to support you, all along you were being supported, you just don't know. You're being supported in many ways. So I wanted to create a sense of hope there. So that's what the plot twist was the beginning, the whole like first like 5 minutes of the short film is you're watching the protagonist go through all these struggles, and it really looks like she's handling all of this stuff by herself. And she's starting to really like break down. And then the plot twist becomes, oh, let's shift to the husband's perspective. And now you're revealing everything the husband's been doing for the wife behind the scenes. The wife just wasn't aware of it to her fullest extent. So you create that sense of hope. And then that was the question at the end, which is like, how do I convey a message that helps you at least even have a glimpse of hope, right? To think to yourself, oh yeah, maybe there are ways I'm being supported too. I just haven't been paying attention to it. And yeah, I mean, the numbers speak for itself. 24 million views later, right? People are crying, tears are coming out, and all that good stuff. So that's how you know you did your job in terms of it's an emotional response that occurred to the content.
What's the name of the video?
Yeah, it's called Blind Devotion. It's a play on going blind, right? Like, and because the wife's going blind, and devotion, blind devotion.
Like as you're describing this, I'm like, man, I feel like I've seen this video. And there's a pretty good chance because, my mom always said I'm 1 in 24 million. Just kidding.
That is true. You're 1 in 9 billion.
Oh yeah, that's
You're not that special, Ryan, right? 1 in 24 million. You're 1 in 9 billion.
Okay, so we've got we're kind of crafting this recipe. So you said that having some kind of an emotional moment, is there something else besides the aha?
So this is where it gets a little nuanced, and the way I structured it down is kind of what I was talking to you about. I mean, looking back on it, I realized this was what it was, right? So, at any point in someone's journey, whatever challenge, problem you're solving, you're usually in one of 4 phases of awareness around that struggle, right? So the first phase of awareness is you're unaware of the problem. These are people who are just in denial right? Perspective shifts in these people don't happen because they don't think they have a problem. They're fine with their world, their belief, their bubble. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The second phase of awareness is the symptoms. So like in the coaching world, which is what I do now, is just like people who don't think they have a problem, like no matter what you try to shift, they're not going to change. So you just bring them one phase at a time. So if the second phase is a symptom-aware person, you might just ask questions that address the symptoms, right? So what are some symptoms of pain that you're going through? I'm feeling lonely, yada, yada, right? Like I might ask like, oh, you're working at this job. Do you like it? It's like, it's okay. Oh, okay, just okay. Meaning if there was something better, would you want it? It's like, yeah, I guess. Okay, so it's just that you do want it. It's not that you like where you are now. It's just what's the gap there? So it's like, oh, I don't know if I'm capable of getting it. Ah, okay. So the symptom here is that you just don't believe that it's possible for you. Do you see what I'm doing there? Like you dig. So that's the sweet spot for a lot of content material, is you start with those symptoms. Like, are these your symptoms? Do you feel alone? Do you feel not supported? And the way you, in storytelling, right, the classic rule in screenwriting is you show it, you don't tell it, right? Show, don't tell. Yeah. So that's why you show the person's life circumstances. They're watching it. Now I can feel and relate to that. So you have to confirm the symptoms. That's how you confirm the symptoms. But then the thing is, most people try to pitch a solution to you, even though you're just only aware of the symptoms. So we want to help people understand what the real problem is. And I think storytelling is a powerful way to do this, because it's just really easy to show what the real problem is, right? Girls going blind, and right? In the communication world, it's a little bit tougher, right? Because no one likes being told, you know what your problem is? You have this fear of,
My wife loves when I do that.
Yeah. Said nobody ever.
You know what your problem is.
So the idea is, how do you help a person self-realize what the real problem is, right? In storytelling, how I did it in that piece was, when you show the plot twist, it's like, oh, wife thought she was all alone, but she wasn't. That addresses kind of like for you to self-realize it. It's like, oh, what if that's my problem? What if what my problem is, I think I'm all alone, but it's not really the case. Is that possible? Or at least like poking holes in what you might think is true, which is, I'm all alone, I'm not supported. So the moment you help bring a person to that third phase of awareness, right, which is the problem awareness, like what is the actual problem here? Because a lot of the struggle with people when it comes to like our own growth and stuff is, we think the thing that we think is the problem is usually never the problem. There's something else that's actually the problem. So it's just to help bring people to this problem awareness. And then once you become problem aware, you're willing to go to the solution awareness, right? Which is the fourth phase. So people who are problem aware are ready to buy, like in the business world, right? They're like, I need a coach. Where do I find a coach? But if I'm only experiencing the symptoms, I haven't connected the dots yet that my real problem is this inner fear that I have, this inner doubt. Like that kind of pathway is the same thing that you want to bring in a storytelling aspect as well. So the plot twist is the thing that helps you kind of become problem aware in the moment. And then the solution awareness, right? It's like, what was the actual solution here? It's to get rid of my belief that I'm all alone. Maybe I should stop believing that. How can I shift this? It was me, right? Oh my God, this is life-changing. I need to share this with someone. Because behind the scenes, a lot of people might not be realizing that's why they're sharing, though. I'm just breaking it down from like the neurological, psychological perspective. Yeah. Because the experience usually just feels like, oh my God, this made me feel good. Let me share it. But I'm just breaking down like the psychology behind what's happening in the person's mind when they're doing all of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so this was the conversation that Eugene and I had on the rooftop, where I was frustrated. He was just asking a lot about my video business and what my goals are. And I'm just thinking through, I'm like, man, I wish we could get more retainer clients, and I wish like more people would, do these brand stories, would understand that, having a brand story can help differentiate them and help really get their soul shared and be able to connect with their ideal audience. And so for me, I started this business with the idea that storytelling is so powerful, and this is what I want to do. So it just makes sense to me. It's like, of course if you're established at all, of course you get a video that shares your heartbeat, the why behind what you do, because as soon as you do that, people are going to hear your passion. They're going to feel that passion. But unfortunately, hardly anybody, people might say like, oh yeah, that'd be cool, but they don't see the ROI. They don't, like, man, that's a lot of money. And for me, I just, I want to shake them and be like, trust me, like, but it's hard to show the data. So you were kind of taking me through these 4 steps, because I just want to get to the end and say that, hey, the solution to your problem, you want to market, you want to connect, you want to do more work with people that you like and that align with your values and all that stuff. So here's what you need. You need a brand story. Just buy one.
Yeah. It's that question of like, are you trying to bring the person to where you're at? Or are you willing to go to where they're at and be the Sherpa that brings them to where they want to go? Because like I think that's kind of what we workshop, right? If you're going around going, everyone needs a brand story, you're selling the solution.
Right.
But the question is, do I even have an awareness of what the actual problem is to begin with? So like, I think how do we, like, I'm trying to remember how we workshopped it, right? Like one of the audiences that you were targeting was universities, for example.
Yeah.
Like, how do we help universities? What are their symptoms? They might be worried about budget. How do we make sure our enrollment rate keeps going up in a season where a lot of people aren't investing in college as much anymore? So I'm worried about that. And I think in the marketing world, this is pretty true. It's one of three things that it all ties down to. There's a saying in the marketing that a mentor of mine says that's kind of crude, but I'll say it. We'll edit it out if it's too crude. It's everything just comes down to three things. It's people either want to get paid, get laid, or live forever. Meaning the marketing just goes down to it's either about money, it's either about status, or it's about relationships, right? So the symptoms in a school might be money. I need more money. We need more money as a budget, so that means we need more students. How do we get more students? And that might be my symptoms. Right? And that's kind of where, how do you tie this into your brand, into the service, into the solution that you can give and get them problem aware about it? It's just like, and then I think we're riffing off of it, just like as an example. It's just like, hey, did you know what happens when you're told a story? Isn't it interesting how as adults, we sit in a dark room for 2.5 hours to be told a story? And did you know that your school has a story too? And it probably directly correlates with your enrollment numbers. I'm tying it to their symptoms, right? Meeting them where they're at, because if they're worried about enrollment numbers. So it's like, well, did you know there's a science behind what happens when you're told a story? When you're told an effective story, this affects buying decisions. This affects the perspective and the belief about the person that you're talking to make them want to come to your school versus someone else's. And that's the thing. It's the problem really here is, are we telling the story, whether it's through your marketing, through your culture, through your employees, through your students, in a way that can increase your enrollment rate? Because the good news is there is a process to this. There's a method to the madness. And that's what we've been doing over the past 15 years is we've been crafting these powerful stories that influence people's behaviors to help them do for themselves what's best for themselves. Do you see what I'm saying? And like, you're just helping people understand what the real problem is. And now you just made stories really sexy.
Yeah.
Because I connected the dots between why do I need a brand story to how does it help my bottom line? You just helped me connected the dots. So now I became problem aware. So I was like, oh, our story isn't compelling enough. You might be able to point out like, this is where your video on your website is faulty or whatever. You might point out all that so that at some point I need to have an epiphany going, oh my God, we don't have a proper story. Because the moment you help them do that without you saying it to them, right? They self-realize it. That's the key here that most people make mistakes on in marketing is you have to empower the person listening. Because otherwise it feels like, you know what your problem is? This is your problem. No one likes the feeling of that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because I could have easily done that in our conversation. I could have been like, Ryan, you know what your problem is? Right? Your problem, right, is your marketing and your messaging sucks. Right? I'm being extreme and exaggerating. It doesn't, but you know what I mean, right? But no one likes that, and no one's brains are receptive to that. Your brain literally gets defensive when people talk like that to each other. So it's the empowering self aha moment. And I think, tying that into story is very powerful, right? Looking back, you might share a story about this is what I realized. And once a person has that aha moment, psychologically, what happens? They're wanting to move into the fourth phase of awareness is, how do I find the solution?
Yeah.
In that case, it might be, how do I find a great brand story? And you're like, I'm right here. And who better to ask for it than the one who just helped me have that revelation,
right?
The aha moment. You just educated me. You just gave me a moment of a breakthrough going, oh my God, this finally makes so much sense to me. That's how you know when you do this well, it's exactly what you just shared earlier in the conversation. It's like this experience of, I had people tell me this before, but it wasn't the way until you just explained it to me that it finally made sense to me. It's a skill, persuasion, communication. That's kind of, I realized that there's a method to the madness is how do you bring people through that 4 phases of awareness, one phase at a time.
Yeah.
Symptom aware people, you don't talk to them about the solution. Like if I'm worried about my enrollment numbers and you go, you need a brand story, that's the gap that you're missing. They're going to go, why do I need one?
Yeah.
My problem is enrollment numbers. But you have to fill that gap. It's like, well, let's look at enrollment numbers. Let's look at buying decisions. Let's look at how story plays into it. At some point, they're going to go, oh my God, that makes sense. Here's the 10 things I see on your homepage that's making people not want to buy due to the story you're telling behind the scenes through this, right? Here's the story you're telling when you're touting all the awards you have. You're making it sound arrogant. It's a turnoff. That's the story you're telling people. It's like, we're egotistical here.
Yeah.
We only like to talk about ourselves. That's the story you're telling. And that's how it's damaging your enrollment numbers. Do you see what I'm doing there? Like, it's all about context that helps me have that aha moment. And the moment you do that for someone, boom, they had an epiphany. That's a huge service in itself, even though they don't become a client.
Dude, that's so good.
It's also a skill to learn. Yeah.
I love that. You know, it makes me think about, we talk a lot about niching. You know, it's like for those of us that are just starting in the world of video, it's like we'll take on any job, any opportunity we get. But the longer we're in this, the more we've got to realize, like, man, I got to figure out, you know, better system for pricing. And if I'm doing all kinds of jobs, that's hard to do. So when you find a niche, the cool thing that happens, the more you work with that niche, the more you understand what their real problems are. So yes, it just becomes easy to speak that language, right?
Exactly.
To know, like, hey, if you're working with universities or just like nonprofits, you know that they need they need funds, they need people that will donate, and they probably need volunteers. You know, there's like 3 or 4 things that like every nonprofit needs. And when you can speak that language to be able to take, you know, people through these 4 stages of awareness, whether that's on your sales call, whether you create content, you know, maybe you've got a couple of pieces on your website or YouTube videos that educate, right? And so this is another reason why having a couple of core pieces of content that you can share when people are coming to your website or just trying to do some research, if you can help take them through those different stages through your content, exactly what you said, the person that they're likely to hire, or at least you're going to be one of the very first that they ask more about, like, well, what does it look like to work with you? How much does it cost? I mean, the chance of you being hired, it just like skyrocket.
It's wild. Yeah. I mean, this was game changer for all the business clients I work with. Like, it was night and day difference. The moment they learned the skill, whether it's in my business or their businesses, it's wild. Like you said, I don't feel like I pitch anymore, honestly. Because there comes that moment where they'll just naturally ask, so what does it look like to work with you? Can we discuss that? And I'm just like, oh, this is great. I'm getting invited to talk about my offers, right? So yeah, it takes that pressure off of like, I have to close the sale. I have to whatever. You don't have to do anything. You just need to be a Sherpa, right? Like a guide that like helps people just come to their own realizations.
Yeah, because then this is the part of sales that everybody hates. They hate, you know, like for me, the parts where I'm frustrated is like, I want them to go from, you know, not being aware that they even have, you know, an issue. It's like, yeah, I mean, our marketing is fine, whatever. We got a website and it's like, whatever. And it's like, yeah, but you need a brand story, you know, like this is going to help you. That's a frustrating way to sell because they're not going to give me the time of day. They're like, dude, like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I over the years, I've had so many conversations. People are like, tell me more about what you do. And I tell them, they're like, oh, okay. You know, but they need what I have, you know, but right, they're not aware. And when you, exactly what you're saying, when somebody can come to their own realization, that's not selling. Like, that's the best thing. It's like, cool. Well, let's talk about like, here's what it looks like to work with us. And here's how we can help is much different than like me trying to, you know, strong arm somebody into saying like, listen, just trust me. You need a brand story.
Yeah. And usually, yeah, you know, that's where people, so that's, I mean, if you look at the psychology behind it, we're all really selling all the time. We're selling something, right? Ideas, perspectives. The problem is when you're selling the wrong thing. It's like, why are you selling the solution when they haven't even been sold on the symptoms yet? It's like, yeah, how is your marketing? How is your conversions? How is your business doing? Are you getting the amount of clients you want? How do you talk about what you do in a way that's persuasive to people to make them want to work with you? How do you do that? I'm just curious. So they're sitting there going, oh crap, like I actually don't know how to talk about this.
Yeah.
Got it. And then at some point you might talk about what the actual problem is. Like, did you know with everything that you're doing, your words, your messaging, your branding, it's telling a story. It's telling some sort of story. Let me show it to you. Here's the story you're telling right now if I were to look at your brand. Number one, it shows arrogance because all you're listing is all the things you've accomplished. You're not talking to me about anything that I'm going through here, right? Not that I view you that way. I know that you have a great product. It's just your story here is just off brand. And XYZ, right? It's just like, number two, you're not even telling me what the problem you solve is on this site. The story you're telling is just like, oh, we're very philosophical and we're not practical. That's the story being told here. Do you actually solve a problem? It's hard to see that. I know you solve a problem, but the story you're telling here, and story, 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 story. At some point, I'm going, oh, story is, I didn't realize story was this important. I didn't know story applies to my messaging. I didn't know story applies to this. How do I develop the skill to tell a great story? Well, I'm glad you asked, right? And then now you're telling them about how you figured it out. And then it makes me want it. Does that make sense? Like, I'm like,
dude,
trying to put it into words here.
It's I'm really excited about this episode. I just think it's powerful. It's a very different way to look at how we sell, and it makes me want to just kind of like sit through and think of all of the different like the different industries that we serve, and think through, like, I know most of the businesses that we work with, they need more revenue, they need more employees, better employees, retention. There's just a handful that, like, pretty much all of them have very similar problems, but, like, thinking through the context of, like, okay, like, and how can story help here? It's very thought provoking. And I think this approach to selling, it should be such a great strategy for all of us to embrace and to really practice.
100%. I mean, if you really think about it, the game changer for me in perspective was selling is actually a service. Like, I've really believed that now.
Yeah.
The problem is when people aren't empathetic, you're selling the wrong thing. Because then you're just selling for your own best interest.
Right.
Oh, I'm trying to sell this thing because I need this much revenue this month. You don't care about the client. But a true salesman meets a person where they're at, is willing to do it. And you meet them where they're at, and you just help them get one step along the way closer to their goal. So that's why, for me, all the time, I'm sitting there going, is this person symptom aware, problem aware, or solution aware right now? It's pretty easy to tell. You want to develop that skill and have that. Because if you're not empathetic, guess who you're focused on? It's yourself, right? My money, my finances. But if you're truly empathetic, you'll meet them where they're at. Oh, okay, they're symptom aware right now. Are they sold on the problem yet? Let me sell the problem.
Yeah.
Or if they're unaware of the symptoms, let me sell the symptoms. Okay, great. I confirmed with them, this is their symptom. This is their pain points. Great. Now it's time to talk about the problem. Can I sell them on the problem? I'm going to share stories, case studies, research, statistics, anything I can share to help them come to their own realization on what the true problem is. Oh my God, story is so important. I realized it now. Great. Now they're aware of the problem. Okay, now it's time to talk about the solution. Not your package yet, because then it's already feeling salesy at that point. You talk about the process of how you figured out the solution. It's like, yeah, looking back on it, I didn't realize how powerful the story was. I mean, scientifically speaking, did you know when you're told a story, every part of your brain gets activated, both the emotions and the logical. So this is why it's so powerful for creating decision-making impact on people, where they make a decision after being told a story because all of their brain is activated. Do you see what I'm saying? You ever have that time where you're being logically told something, sold something, but you don't feel like buying it, so you don't buy it? This is where story comes in, because it not only helps you know something, it helps you feel something. And now that affects the buying decision as well. And having a powerful brand story does exactly that. And now you're helping them become solution aware. Oh, I need a brand story.
Yeah.
Where do I find one? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is what we've been doing for the past 10 years. We make it really easy for you.
That's so good.
XYZ.
So I would also just add to this, because not everyone listening does stories, right? They're creating videos, but that's also the same. The power of video in general is like, you're engaging people's senses, and you've got that opportunity to do something that you can't just get from the written word or just from audio only. So no matter what industry, or not even one industry, but what your specialty is in video, think through that lens of like, okay, what I create helps people in a certain way and engages people in a very different way. So don't just feel like, oh, Eugene and Ryan, thanks, that was really cool. Like, if you're really just really focused on creating brand stories, how does that help me as a motion designer? Or we just do event films, like, I'm not sure it applies.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a video thing too, you can get, logistical with it too.
Yeah.
It's like, why is video so powerful? Did you know video is the only medium that stimulates more than one sense? What do I mean? If you're reading something or hearing someone talk, like an audio, your ears are being stimulated, right? But film is the only one where your eyes and your ears get stimulated. And why is this important? people's buying decisions, right? More senses need to be stimulated. And that's what video does. This, yeah, it's a little bit more pricey, but this is the power of what's happening. Like I like to go scientific sometimes because it just makes it feel less woo, like less, lofty.
Yep.
But you just help people understand that. It's just like, oh, that makes sense. Video does stimulate more than one sense. I'm visualizing, I'm listening, I'm hearing. It creates more of an experience for your person versus just one sense alone.
I mentioned this to you when we were together. I'm a total feeler, right? So when I'm trying to explain to people, the power of a brand story, it really is just because I believe it just makes your heart, beat a little bit faster, makes you lean in, and no science. It's just like, no, this is just how you feel. But I remember years ago, in one specific meeting, we had just watched, I think it was a workshop that Patrick Moreau had hosted, and it was called like The Science of Story or something like that. And he was doing like what you're doing, like breaking down from a scientific, perspective of like, here's what's happening when you're telling a story. And we shared that in this, it was a workshop, or it was a sales pitch, really is what it was. And we had gotten a response. I was like, I felt like I was talking out of my butt because I'm like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not, this smart, but like this stuff makes sense. And I can actually regurgitate some of these things. And it was like something else had clicked for them. So instead of me trying to convince them that emotionally this makes sense, it was just like, oh, and scientifically, and they're like, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So dummy me, I just haven't really like used that, but running into you and having that conversation, and this one too, I'm just like, man, when people want to know what's the ROI, or like, give me more reasons, this is like, digging into this just seems like this will make my job so much easier, and I will become more of a guide if I can ask the right questions and lead the conversation in a way that is helpful in trying to serve whoever it is that I'm talking with.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a skill. Yeah. It's not some magical thing in your genetics that only a few select people. It's just a skill. You do it enough times, you get better at it, right? I got to form the skill through my filmmaking experience and having hundreds and hundreds of coaching conversations of understanding like how to be empathetic, asking the right questions, and it came together and I figured out it's a skill.
I love that. Well, are there any other like, I don't know, like hacks, scientific hacks so we're creative, we're running businesses, we're having to make cool videos. There's plenty of obstacles in our lives that trap us, get us stuck, get us feeling like, oh man, I don't have what it takes. I don't have the energy. I just can't figure it out, right? I'm just trying harder and harder and harder. And it's just like, it's just not happening. Yeah. Any other like advice for us that you can?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember the grind. I remember there was a motto in the filmmaking world. It's just like, always expect at least one thing to go wrong. Like, and it was so true. Someone forgot like the memory card, or someone forgot the lens case or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I remember how hectic it can feel. And over the years, where my healthcare background came full circle, was how do you achieve self-mastery so that you continue to activate the part of yourself that can solve problems, creativity, right? Stay creative, have that energy. Because the shocking research that I found is for about 70% of our adult life, the part of your brain where you do have access to like your highest levels of creativity, critical thinking, problems, it's actually shut off. Like you're not accessing it for about 70% of your adult life. So that's kind of the mission I've been on. Why does this happen? It's because how unsafe we feel. Oh, Think about it. If you're like always on the grind, like how unsafe do you feel? It's like, oh my God, there's a deadline I have to meet and bad things will happen if I don't meet it. So it's because your brain is treating these feelings that you feel as a threat. So think about it. If you're in front of a tiger that's about to eat you, you're not thinking anymore in that moment. You're going to go into a reactive mode.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And it only knows how to do one of three things: fight, flight, freeze. But the key thing to understand is you're reacting without thinking. You're not creative when a tiger is in front of you, but you're not sitting there going, let me brainstorm a little bit. You're not doing that. But the reason we're in that same exact mode for about 70% of our adult life is not because we're surviving from physical threats. We're surviving from emotional threats. So if you think about how often you feel stressed, anxious, frustrated, right, on a deadline, your brain actually thinks that's a threat because it doesn't feel good. And research shows that emotional pain can be just as painful as physical pain. You see what I'm saying?
Wow.
So if for 70% of our adult life, you're not accessing your highest levels of creativity, problem solving skills, right? Business growth skills, that's the thing that I got curious about. I got excited because using my healthcare background, I discovered brain science. I'm like, oh my God, if people just had a basic understanding of how the brain works and what it actually does and how to use it, because no one's born with a manual, right? When you come out of the womb, there's no manual and like, here's how to activate the, highest performance of your brain throughout your life. Only if we had that. So that's been my mission, is to create that manual. And that's kind of what I teach now. Is how do you activate that creativity more? How do you activate that performance more? And I show you all the science behind it. And I started a school around it. It's called Neurohacking School. And that's kind of how I do it, how I train people to help them get that.
And if there was one thing, is it just like eat more apples or something? It's like,
yeah, why not?
12 hours
apple
a day
keeps the doctor a day. It's about self-mastery, getting to know yourself really well, right? Understanding that some of these things that you're going through are probably just autopilot stuff, right? The negative thoughts you carry, the fear you might carry, the not listening to good advice habits that you might have or whatever. It's simply because of your brain's autopilot. Like over time, your brain goes on autopilot. You know how just like you don't go down the stairs going, I need to put my left foot forward and my right foot forward. You're able to do it without thinking. The brain science shows that the same applies to your beliefs, your thoughts, right? I can't do this. I can't figure this out. This is hard, or, people don't understand me. So it's this understanding of how do you achieve that self-mastery? It starts within you, like just figuring out within you, like what's going on. Because usually it is where the problem came from, honestly speaking.
I read recently, do you know John Acuff? He wrote the book Soundtracks.
Yes.
Yeah. So listen to that. I think earlier this year, or maybe it was last fall. Love that book. And I'm super cheesy. I started doing the daily affirmation that he kind of listed out, and my wife makes fun of me. She's like, "What are you doing? You're not leaving this room. What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm launching from it." It's like just one of the lines in the affirmation. But it was such a cool book because, again, he wasn't like trying to, say like, "Oh, Ryan, you just got to feel better and like, make good decisions." He talked about the science, and he talked about like autopilot, exactly what you're saying, and how our brains are wired, and how with things that we say to ourselves, these positive affirmations actually, like, I'm going to say this totally wrong, but like remap the way that our brain operates. And maybe just explain what I'm trying to explain, but way better.
You're talking about neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
That's your brain's ability to rewire the neural networks in the brain. So that was a big game changer, because you know how there used to be this, I think there still is the saying, right? Like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? Older people are set in their ways. The science is totally busting that myth. It is not true. Your brain has the capability of changing till its dying breath. And we have all the research to prove it. We literally have footage now of like nerves, like creating new and like rewiring, like we have footage of it now. So your brain is able to change till its dying breath. So, from a like a self-reflection standpoint, it's that question of like, you don't think you could do it? What if that's not true? You don't think you have what it takes? What if that's not true? You can't learn this? This is hard? Are you sure that's true? Or is that just a neural network in your brain that just got wired that way because of your unique life experiences, right? Because we form beliefs about things all the time. If you watch your parents struggle with money, you might carry a belief that money is hard to make.
Yeah.
You watch your parents divorce, you might form this belief that relationships are hard. But you have to question, is this actually true or not? Because there's such a thing as other people who might not carry the same beliefs as you. But for you, it's real. But it's not real for someone else, then who's to say what's real? So it's just kind of going down that rabbit hole, if that makes sense. And the science just really helps guide you through this process.
That's amazing.
Of transformation.
Dude, well, how can, I know you've got this new course. How can people follow along with you on social media and get more information about this teaching and stuff that you're doing?
Yeah. So if you wanted to follow my stuff, social media, Eugene K. Choi is my Instagram handle. And then another platform that I use on occasion is LinkedIn, if you wanted to find me through there, just for like contact. Yeah, that's the social. And then in terms of the URLs and stuff, I have a podcast as well. It's called neurohackingpodcast.com. You can check that out. More content to come soon because I don't have that much content on it yet. And then there's the launch of my school that I launched, neurohackingschool.com. That brings you through the training. We have a community that we're building there where you can meet twice a month to ask questions. And that's where you can also find me or get access to me.
I love it, dude. So good. What's your final, I mean, at least for today, not your final encouragement, but, thinking about the people that are listening, filmmakers, business owners, just really understanding, like we understand that the business is important and, maybe the what we've been doing for the longest time isn't totally sustainable. So realizing that we really need to focus on the business so that we can maybe find some more breathing room in our lives and some more enjoyment. What encouragement would you leave us with today?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that helped me a lot is to prioritize this relationship that you have with yourself. So context of what I mean by that, I remember there was this leader asked a very cliche question: how do I find the perfect partner for me, right? How do I find the chosen one? As if there's such a thing as this one person in the world that you can hold 100% responsible for your happiness. It's just impossible, right? It doesn't exist, sorry. Right. But the real reason people ask that question to begin with is they already carry a belief about themselves. That's not true. Like, I'm not loved, I'm not worthy. You see what I'm saying? So therefore I need something outside of me to fill this hole, because I believe that I'm broken and I need something to complete me. So the leader understood this question was coming from a place of fear to begin with and insecurity. So he just asked a really powerful question, which was, would you go out with yourself? And I remember that hit me like a ton of bricks for two big reasons. Number one, I immediately realized my answer was no, because it's easy to point out all the things you don't like about yourself, your flaws and all that. Right. But the bigger aha moment I had in the moment was, oh my goodness, I can tell my wife that I love her and I do all these nice things for her because I love her. But if I don't love me, if I don't have a healthy relationship with me, I'm actually not doing it for her. I'm doing it for me. You see what I'm saying? If I have low self-esteem, if I doubt myself, if I don't love myself, I'm patient with myself, there's an ulterior motive there. Oh, do these nice things for her. Maybe you'll finally feel like you matter. Or work really hard and accomplish more. Maybe you will finally feel like you matter. This is why people who work really hard burn themselves out. It's because they're coming from a place of insecurity to begin with. They're carrying some sort of belief about themselves that's not true. So that was a big aha, because I can claim all I want that I care about people and I love them and I care for them. But if I don't take good care of myself and I allow myself to get burnt out, all those things I'm doing for other people were for me anyway. It's to try to, relieve my insecurity that I carry. So I share that context because it took self-care, self-love to a whole different level for me. Because it's so important. It's how you relate to yourself it just brings light to everything. And I think that's one of the most important things is, how is your relationship with yourself? Do you get yourself what you need, the support you need? Do you provide yourself the safe space to think smarter instead of working harder? So that you can actually figure out the truth on what you actually need to figure out. So I encourage that a lot. Give yourself space. The symptom I hit with people a lot to get them aware of this, one thing I encourage is set a timer for 5 minutes. Sit with yourself. Do nothing. See how you feel. Are you feeling urgent, like you have to get something done? Are you feeling nervous? But where is that actually coming from if you're not doing anything? It's not coming from your outer environment. It's always been inside of you. You're uneasy. You're feeling restless. You're feeling scared. It's not the job. The job won't change that. The money won't change that. The relationship won't change that. So it's this idea of self-mastery. That's kind of the mission I've been on, is how do you get to know yourself that well?
Dude, I love it. That's so good. Thanks for all those knowledge bombs. Also, thanks for the old fashions. Those were great.
Yes, that was fun.
That was super fun, man. I am grateful to know you, and seriously, I'm walking away from this episode with a different mindset. So really appreciate it today.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, and then here's our awkward ending.
We'll have a moment of awkward silence, please.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
All right, my friend. So what do you think about all this science stuff? Do you agree that this approach might help you become better at sales? Hand raised, yes, me. I do, for me. Or was there something else that stood out in the episode? Let me know. Leave a comment if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. Feel free. You can shoot me an email and let me know if there was something that stood out to you, something that you liked or didn't like. You can get access to all of the show notes, the links, the things that we talked about, just by going to studiosherpas.com/305. And don't forget about the mastermind. Applications are now being accepted. We are launching in June, so get off your tush and fill out an application if you think that this might be a good fit. You can do that at studiosherpas.com/mastermind. Mastermind. It's my trying to psychologically, what is that? Subliminally. Yeah, that word, subliminally. Wow. Say that 3 times slow. I can't. Anyway, yes. That's it. I hope you have an amazing week. Thank you so much for making it this far in the show. I appreciate you. I love your guts, and I will talk to you on another episode really soon. Till then, onward and upward, my friend. See ya.